So thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to Social Baker's webinar, Digitally Transformed Prove It. My name is Lindsay Sacco, and I lead field marketing efforts for our North America region at Social Bakers. So today we have Bob Gearing here with us. Bob is the Global Head of Enterprise Solutions, and he will be presenting on the importance of going digital, why it's a must now and into the future. So just for some housekeeping, we have the chat there at the bottom, so feel free to write in any questions you have throughout, and we'll get to those. We'll also have a Q&A round at the end of this webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob here, and he'll kick us off. Thanks, Bob.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate everybody joining. Looks like we've got a fair amount of attendees today. So as Lindsay mentioned, love to have your questions coming in the chat. I will be sharing the deck as she mentioned. We'll email this out. We'll do our best not to harass you about buying our product. I always feel for me, it's more of a when we'll partner up, not if we'll partner up. So let me know what you guys want to dig into further. As she mentioned, we'll just have a little bit of a Q&A at the end. And I'd love to kick off and just make sure this chat's working. I would love to understand where everybody's basically either logging in, calling in, or basically joining the webinar from today. So if we want to throw those into the chat, I'd love to see where our folks are all joining from. Just kick off. Louisville. All right, we've got Atlanta, Egypt, Netherlands. We've got Seattle, New York, Ghana, DC, Connecticut. All right. I even see some South Africa, Argentina. We've got a lot of international folks. I wasn't sure what to expect today. We've been promoting kind of the webinars. We're going to be doing some series of these, as I'm sure you've been seeing. And, you know, with all of us stuck at home, trying to make sure that we're getting everybody a little bit of love and how to kind of digitally transform their business. So let's kick off. So I wanted to talk a little bit about myself to start, my favorite place. So I am originally from Detroit. I've been here now working with Social Bakers over the last 6 years. I helped start their US offices when we kicked things off on our side. We have now been here in the US just a little bit more than 6 years. There's about 45 of us in our New York office and growing, right? So we're doing some really cool stuff. I think when people talk about Social Bakers, the thing that they don't know is we're actually headquartered in Prague, right? That's where we started. We had 4 co-founders that had put their heads together, started to figure out when social was getting really, I think, just kind of off the ground, to start tracking Facebook pages, right? We were actually called Face Bakers back in the day. So from our perspective, being able to start categorizing those, benchmarking brands and really start realizing how brands are performing across those benchmarks was where we started. We've evolved. We've now got over 500 employees. We've got 13 offices actually worldwide. And now from our perspective, we're really helping companies understand what they should be posting, when they should be posting it, should they spend money on it, and now becoming more of your all-in-one solution to actually help you push that content out at those times, run those analyses, and really start digging deeper into your social media marketing. So at this point, we've got the largest data set, right? We've got 1.6 billion data points, over 800 billion interactions. For us, really kind of tracking these millions of pages on a day-to-day basis across all the major platforms, as you can see here, is where we're helping so many businesses today, right? So we're working with folks like WWE, the NFL, we've got Discovery, Estee Lauder. We've also got a lot of mid-market, small, medium businesses. I actually lead our enterprise sales here globally. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about some of those brands as we run through the deck as well. I want this to be really interactive, right? So from my side, obviously, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing that Q&A at the end, but as I'm going through the slides, if you have questions, I'm going to try to work on being as interactive as possible during this. So I have the chat pulled up on the right side here on my second screen that I'll be engaging back and forth with you. So feel free to throw in some questions. I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm replying to them. Or trying to while I'm live going through the deck and going through everything else. So if there's things that you want me to dig into a little bit further, you have something that you'd love to pick our brains on, We've dug into a lot of this data over the last couple of weeks as Lindsay and I were putting this together for everyone. So really making sure that we hit the things that you're interested in is kind of the goal for this. So digital transformation, right? I'm sure some of you Googled digital transformation before joining this call. It's all the rage right now, right? So from our perspective, we want to start thinking about how do we work that people start building the processes, right? And evolving those processes to then create solutions, right? So I think from our side, really trying to make sure and start digging into what is digital transformation, right? I would love for you, and let's kick off with another interactive piece. Let's punch in number one, if you feel like your company is already digitally transformed, and let's type in a number two if you've recently attended a Zoom meeting, a call, or something during this quarantine that are basically how is your company going to catch up and become digitally transformed? So I'll give a second for folks to kind of jump in here and throw into the chat. One, if you're a digitally transformed business. Two, if you think you're still trying to get there. Got it. So we've got 3 twos, mostly a lot of twos. A little emoji too. Yeah, all right, so we're getting it going. And Alan, while I'm here and kind of taking in this info, some small medium businesses that we're working with, I can happily share some stuff after. We've got a lot of folks kind of across the board on that, so I'll happily send over some info on that as well, for sure. I wanted to talk through right now when we think of, and Randy actually just mentioned personal brand as a one, company is possibly a two, kind of. So I always love kind of hearing where we're also at from a personal standpoint on these. With that being said, right, and now digital transformation, I feel like I've seen, and this is one of my favorite follows, Tom Fishburne. I'm not sure how many you follow, but if you don't, do that immediately. This is one of the examples that I felt like just really kind of hit this kind of on the ground running, right? With now digital transformation being something that everybody's really focused on and how they're going to really kind of move the needle for their business straight away, right? And one of the second ones, I had actually a friend send me this one when I had mentioned that I was going to be leading this seminar right today, and webinar I should call it today. I had just watched the Chappelle Kennedy Center Award on Netflix special. So when I saw this one, I was legitimately cracking up. So also in the chat, if you want to throw in any suggestions on Netflix streaming, anything that you guys are digging into, I really need some suggestions. I think I've burned through almost all of their content now. So hopefully I will be adding some new ones to my feed here if you throw them into the chat as well. Now, it's been about a month, right? A little bit over a month now since I've been quarantined here, specifically in New York City, right? Some of you have possibly been longer, less, right? Depending, and now we have a lot more international folks than I even was expecting today. So everybody's in a little bit of a different state. So in some sort of semblance here now, I feel like companies have really figured out that they maybe weren't set up for work from home cultures, right? We've all had to pivot. We've all had to take care of ourselves, maybe our families, neighbors. But last but not least, in my opinion, really is where the businesses needing to be taken care of. Where has everybody turned, right, during these times? Social media, right? We've seen a 200% plus uptick in the time spent on social media over the last month and a half, essentially. I actually was looking at my screen time report from my iPhone last night as I was running this. It's gone down a little bit over the last week. I think I'm trying to trend with the curve. Hopefully that's diminishing as well. But trying to really make sure that we're spending time and we're reaching our fans and those folks that we're trying to build that rapport with on the times that they're kind of out there, right? Now, the volume of these posts has gone through the roof, right? So when we start looking at things with Facebook here specifically, this is going to look at the evolution of those posts about the coronavirus on content on both Facebook and Instagram. But what you'll notice here is Facebook is exponentially higher than Instagram. But what I found was really most interesting was that Instagram still, although it's got way less posts and way less kind of Corona content, I would say, the interactions are through the roof, right? And they've surpassed Facebook. Now, if you follow Social Bakers or spend any time on the internet overall, you've probably been in the loop that Instagram surpassed Facebook in 2019 as the most engaging platform, right? And this is clearly showing that we're not seeing anything slowing down. Now, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and we had our data team pull this analysis, right? So we started looking at year over year so that we could start understanding, because now digital transformation being exponentially driven based on this coronavirus, now how did that really affect it by platform, right? So when we started looking at those average interactions year over year, 2019 to 2020, as you see here, the darker colors in the red, the orange, and the yellow, those are the ones that are actually showing a downward swing, right? When we're seeing the green and the lighter kind of yellows, that's where we're starting to see things that are on the uptick. And this is Facebook specifically, right? So overall, we're seeing a bit of a decline. But what we see here when I flip to Instagram in that same time frame is much more yellow and green, right? Now, the lighter colors, as you can see here, of that green are a little bit of a diminish, but what we're seeing is mostly growth, right? So what I liked with this is really starting to see the growth is continuing to go across Instagram. And now we're really starting to see the growth kind of overall in the board, right? So I think from our side, we're really looking at this from a scale. And Carrie's asking a question here. The last slide showed that the Facebook engagement was higher than Instagram. So with that, we're really starting to dig in, and we see here the total number of interactions, right, was actually higher from Instagram's perspective. So that's where we're now starting to dig in a little bit further to see where should we be spending time as a business so that we can continue to kind of dive in there, right? I want to dig in a little bit further. Now, the industries that are posting about the coronavirus, as we can see here when we dig into the two platforms, clearly service industries, right? And mostly telecom or finance, even gambling, right? Or the lack thereof with no sports and anything kind of happening today. Those are the ones that are actually leading the way here, right? So I wanted to pose a question here and just start digging in. Are there any other industries that you've been seeing posting a lot that maybe aren't represented here? Are there things that maybe you would have expected to show up here that aren't? I think some of the ones for me, right, that I had looked at was beauty, which I feel like we have a lot of beauty partners, right? And that was one that I feel like their sales are very, very low and taking a lot of a hit here during this time. But I think what we've really seen is the growth of live content and video and really people trying to inundate how-tos and things along those lines. So I think that's something that I was a little bit surprised about. We've got some folks mentioning sport as well as something that they thought would show up on here. Now, especially with the lack thereof and everybody shutting down those. NGOs is another one somebody had mentioned. I think from our perspective, right, being able to dig in and start looking at where will people be pushing that content in the future, that's really interesting to us. And that's the stuff that I want to really dig into. And online education was the last one that somebody had just shared. So we'll keep an eye out and maybe be able to even update these numbers as we go. You'll be able to come to socialbakers.com and actually dig in. We traditionally are posting these and pushing these out on a fairly regular basis, whether it's digital transformation or COVID content overall. Now, the last thing that I wanted to touch on around the COVID aspects was something that I found fairly interesting. Now, this was ad dollars overall, right? Now, ad dollars on social have completely slowed down, right? So when we're looking at these, the crisis has now hit its critical mass. We've seen a major decline across the globe as far as when people are engaging with that content, but to see brands basically stopping that spending was a little bit confusing and surprising to me. I think now more than ever, us as consumers, we're spending all of our time on social because it's our time to get away, right? We're all working from home. I'm here today at my apartment and trying to figure out ways to have those healthy breaks, to take the time to pop out, right? To be able to dig in around those things. That's what we've really wanted to do. There's a Q&A question from Edwin around ad spend across Africa. So those are things that we've actually posted out. We can share that as a part of our follow-up as well. We do have it broken down by region. If you're a Social Bakers client, we actually give benchmarks across all the ad spends across the globe. They're white labeled based on some of our partners that are using us to ultimately understand that data. So that's something we could help you with, and we can definitely connect offline on that, Edwin. Not a problem. Now, I want to talk through digital transformation and really get into the hot topic of today, right? So if you did your homework when you signed up for this webinar, you should basically know the answer, I would imagine. So I will let a few folks throw in their answers and see what we think, but what percentage of companies do you think have gone fully digital and have done it successfully? And I'll let everybody kind of jump in here on the chat with A, B, or C. So it looks like a lot of our folks have been following our LinkedIn. We've got a few A's, we've got a bunch of B's mixed in there, and you guys are right. Success rate for digital transformation, which is presented to us by McKinsey & Co. here, it's less than 30%, which I was a little bit surprised about, right? Because I think it also ties back to the initial question I asked, which was just kind of more gut feeling. Do you feel like your business is transformed digitally, or do you feel like you're still striving to kind of get there? And we had a pretty fair, close 50-50 on that. So being able to really see how this is working now, and where people are looking at that, it's interesting to see now where that'll kind of go forward. Right. So I want to talk, why is it so important? Right. Now, these are a few key topics that are, I think, really important. And for us to focus on eliminating the structural barriers, right? Now more than ever, especially with all of us working home, technological barriers, right? I mean, Zoom has become the hot word of the, I feel like, the month, whether it's, your friends, your family, your parents, maybe even learning how to run Zoom calls, right? Those happy hour calls with your friends, any ways that you can really start connecting. These are the things that we've started to become the norm, not only from a business perspective, right? Where I've really seen a lot of companies that are performing and doing well is really prioritizing the customer journey overall, right? Trying to step out of those outdated workflows and really kind of try to connect with me wherever I'm spending my time, which is currently on social, most of us, right? I think for us, it's really kind of relaying that transparency, being able to understand that data, what's performing, what's not performing, right? How are we working as a company? This has become the critical factor to digital business growth, right? So from our perspective, to push this, we really need to put our customers first, right? Think about right now, and a topic that I've been discussing with a ton of my clients, Instagram shoppability, right? Either I'm the biggest sucker of everyone here, or Instagram is getting really good at targeting me, and you as a business is getting really good at targeting me. But I've bought a lot of things off of Instagram during the quarantine, a few things that I didn't even know that I wanted, right? So from my perspective, being able to really dig in and understand where your fans are and where those fans are engaging, this is something we really want to help with. Now, I'm going to dig into 4 of these as we continue to shift forward. Now, these are 4 that I felt friends in the business, clients that I work with, prospects that I'm trying to work with. These were all highlighted very often in most of those conversations, right? So from my perspective, really starting to look at 4 key factors, right? I'll start with the consumer data management. I think this is really going to be what ultimately defines our digital future, right? So understanding how you're storing your data, really now, and we've seen this with the GDPR compliance, really making sure that you're focusing on the privacy of my data, right, as your fan or as your consumer. I think now companies more than ever are really working to build that transparency, really build that long-term trust, right? But I think for us, also making sure that we know how to use this new technology, right? Create those experiences for our partners and for our fans and the folks that are actually digging into our data on a day-to-day basis, right? Those are things that are going to be key to move yours forward. Now, as I mentioned before, I've been buying everything on Instagram because it feels so personalized. So I think this one specifically, right, enhancing the customer experience has been the one that's hit me the hardest. I feel like everything has been really focused on, I don't know, I was buying workout gear for my apartment because now I'm here all the time and I'm not leaving, right? And whether it's sneakers or anything else that I'm kind of digging into on a regular basis. I'd love to hear if any of these have really resonated with you all in the chat while I'm kind of connecting the dots on the last couple. But to me, again, these have resonated very highly, working to attract new folks. The thing that I find is really now brands more than ever are starting to get really good at coordinating what that voice is on a platform by platform basis, because it should vary. It shouldn't be the same, right? We don't want to be repurposing content. We don't want to be basically pushing out the same thing across the board on a regular basis. Now, I'll dig in a little bit here around social media trends, right? So when I start thinking about the things that have really popped up for me, short form video, short form content overall, I think they've matched our attention spans and really tried to grab me so that I start continuing to pay attention. And I talk about this on a regular basis with all of our partners that we work with. One of the ones that jumped out to me was, and this is just maybe focused because I've been using it so much during this quarantine, but I don't know how many, has anybody tried Quibi? Yeah, the new interactive, it's basically a kind of a competitor to, I would say, TikTok and YouTube. It's something that just launched. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are if you've used it. I just watched this documentary on a sneaker doc that Lena Waithe did. It's all 7-minute video content, super digestible, very quick. And when I turn the phone, I have the ability to turn it either landscape or keep it up, just upright, and the content doesn't shift or move, right? It's allowing me to basically consume the video as I would want, right? And I think that for me right now, that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to figure out how to connect with our fans on a day-to-day basis, right? I think the other ones that really kind of popped out here on this point for me were going to be the pieces that were localizing content overall, because now I feel as a fan and as me, when I'm looking at these pieces of content that I'm getting inundated with on social, the ones that are really representing what's happening around me and what's happening on a regular basis, this is for me where I'm spending a lot of my time. And I think the last piece is really shoppable content. So Instagram right now is really focusing, and they're actually going to be enabling a lot of things in the API before the end of the year, which will allow you as the brands and as the leaders and marketers of these to be able to start having a lot more data around who those shoppers are, how did the experience go for them, did they buy, did they click through, where did they kind of go? And this way we can start really digging into that experience overall. So these are just a few of the trends that I wanted to talk through. But I wanted to highlight right now, specifically platform by platform, what is performing. Because as marketers, we want to basically understand, where do we engage with our fans? How are they utilizing our platforms and interacting with us on a day-to-day basis? So one thing that really, for me, I used to not love Facebook Live. I thought it was something that was not really working well. Now this is focusing on organic and public data specifically, right? Now, what I saw around this was Live is blowing everybody out of the water for Facebook specifically here. So being able to really dig in and understand how this is working, I think all of us have taken a step back from it. I think we need to dig back in and dive deeper. So photos are still working better than videos. To me, videos are still something that gets pushed down in our Facebook feeds. And when we start seeing those, we want to start working on the posts that are actually going to work and the things that are really resonating with our fans. Now, the story is similar on Instagram, but for this, I wanted to mention something. Instagram TV isn't something that's publicly available in their API currently today, so we can't really evaluate that, which is a little bit of a bummer. But in the other formats, right, carousel's huge. Now, a little trick that I like sharing with a lot of our partners, and I'm not sure if any of you all know this, but when we're working on the carousels, right, we're able to essentially drop the carousel out. We might have 3 frames or 4, or, you decide however many you're going to have, right? Now, when I sign back into Instagram, if I didn't engage with your carousel the first time, I actually get served that a second time. And that carousel continues to get served to me as I basically flip through your slideshow each time as I sign in. Now, I need to be somebody that's engaging with your content regularly, so I'm push that. But basically, if we're able to create engaging content, use these carousels on a much more consistent basis, we're going to continue to show up on our fans' feeds regularly and have that little key push to have that second or that third hit as they sign back into the Instagram. I would love to just really quickly toss into the chat, are you currently using the carousel format today? I would just love to just hear if there's anybody that's actually driving carousels out, or have, for that instance, had this example working where you're seeing a lot more engagement here versus images and videos, which are ultimately the lowest on this. And Randy's crushing carousels. Love that. Good to see. I think, for us, this has been something that's been a little bit of a hidden gem. And I think Instagram was working on really pushing this, but now on our side, right, there's a few folks saying they rarely run it. They have to promote that within the app, right? I think right now, Instagram is going to continue to evolve. And as they've become the #1 platform, making it a little bit easier to publish on folks like third-party apps like ourselves. Maybe you use somebody else in the space, but giving that little bit of an ability to not have to do that natively on the platform is ultimately the goal in the long run, right? Let's talk Instagram stories. So I think one of my favorite, sorry, we had a question coming in here. When you use a carousel, one of your fans will sign on and see different images. Yeah, so just to kind of clarify, right? Somebody had asked, when you use the carousel format, fans will sign on and see different images within the carousel. So each of the frames of that carousel will continue to get served as I come back to the app, basically. So most people are digesting usually, I'd say 8 to 10 pieces of content as they flip through, spending time on 1 or 2 of them and really just continuing to flip, right? That'll lead me kind of into the next piece with stories here. But through the carousels, if you continue to put up content in that format, it will resurface and basically reappear on my feed as I continue to log into the tool, which I just think is a little bit of a hot tip for you to run that on the side. I think for me, the stories, right, we've seen them start to surpass the number of posts. And I think this is really interesting because the more legacy fans you have, it also becomes a problem. And by legacy fans, I mean fans that have liked me maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The more pages I end up liking on Instagram and the more brands that I end up following on Instagram, the more kind of start showing up and getting pushed basically out of my feed. So for me to continue to show up, stories is a great way to essentially choose that short form content. It's very easy to digest. I think for you, the focus on stories is really making sure you grab my attention right away, or I'm like literally flipping to the next, right? The right content, the right voice, and also the right time for me is the best way to basically engage with those fans much more regularly, right? Now, I'd love to talk through how everyone is tracking Instagram stories. If there's anything that you have questions wise on this, this was one of my favorite parts of our tool here specifically. So from our perspective, we're able to, really help our clients on a day-to-day basis understand performance on stories, right? Most of our partners, before they start using us or before they start working with us, and you may be doing some of the same things, are using the app, right? And you're doing this natively. Huge pain, right? Trying to go and make sure that you remember to hop on at like 23 hours and 55 minutes or whatever to basically download that. Now that data lives in Instagram for 2 weeks, but after that, it's essentially gone. So with Social Bakers, you can actually add your Instagram insights. We start tracking from that day going forward. And this is where you have these little roll-ups, right? Over whatever the time frame is, from an impressions, completion rate across your frames, story reach, replies, exits, and forwards. For me, this is the way that we're able to really help move the needle. Now, you can even go and watch the stories. These are just a few that I had actually screenshot from another presentation that I had used before, but being able to understand what's working for you and watch those stories, we're basically adding and logging that content on the back end of our tool so that you can continue to watch what's working. We also allow you to even now use our tool to automatically tag that content. So by keyword, by hashtag, we're even building some AI around how colors will actually start to evolve. And is it blue that's working really well in this instance for Bud Light, or does red do better? These are ways that we're going to start allowing you to use that AI to ultimately make your decisions a lot faster and a lot smoother, right? And Alan's asking just about the slide format. This is through Google Slides. We're going to share this after, so you'll actually be able to dig in this a little bit further. Just getting a couple questions here, so I'm just going to push pause for a second. Do you think that the stories drive an impression strategy, a call to action, or mostly engagement? So for me, everybody's using stories differently, right? Some folks are using stories to continue to pop up and keep relevant in my feed. Some people are using the swipe up, or they're using methodology to drive me to a website, link to basically let me buy directly on their Instagram, right? So from our perspective, the ROI on a story, right, is being able to start understanding those things which are now being added by Instagram and really dig in a little bit deeper. But if you can't report on these metrics specifically, or if you're doing this natively and you're not able to scale this, that's where I think we can really help you to ultimately drive that across the board so that you're getting this, and this report can be spit out automatically on a monthly, on a weekly, daily basis, whatever you want to kind of do with that, so that this way you're in tune with what's working and what's not overall, right? Now, digging a little bit deeper into the stories, right? This is a huge thing, and everybody's always asking us, what's actually working? How is this not? I think for me, it's really looking at tap backs and tap forwards, right? So when I was mentioning earlier, being able to really think through your frames, right? Because now I'm trying to decide as a business, how many frames are too many, right? Did I get something that grabs somebody's attention right away? Big, bold colors. Is it something that's not got like a million different hashtags or text that's really super heavy? To me, if I'm not engaged right away, when I'm sitting on my phone, I'm flipping through it usually in a 10-15 minute period, which is kind of that average time spent. And I'm in and out, right? So I want something that's going to grab my attention and really kind of move the needle there. So trying to build that engagement overall is where I've really kind of got that. Now, one of the other trends that I've really been into right now, and this is literally the way I feel when I log into my Instagram right now. Hands up if anybody else feels that way, or feel free to comment. But this was from Quentin Quarantino, who's been one of my favorite follows during this quarantine. So I would say, if you haven't gone live yet, right, it's something that a lot of brands are really trying to do now. Now, not everybody's doing it great, and this is something that we always stress to our clients and prospects or anybody. Making sure that you're able to grab a hold of the format. Don't just do it because everybody's doing it, right? Come up with a plan, execute the plan, and then live out of that plan and make sure that you're hitting your people when they're engaging, right? I feel like right now I'm being inundated with lives. There's a bunch of shitty content that's just not working that I dig into for a second, and I'm probably going to move that brand out of my feed at times, right? So making sure we're putting out compelling content, but bringing in lives. There's been a lot of collaboration lives that I've noticed also, where you can request and have two folks basically pushing both of their audiences, those alerts, and really getting in there. There's some cool stuff going on, but I think making sure you have a plan so you can dig into that. That's always basically the crucial thing for me. Now, something that I wanted to just drop in here, one of the last trends that I've seen, and not only a trend, but it's one that I don't love, is repurposing a content. I kind of alluded to that before. What we see is 91% of brands have at some point copy and pasted that same content across all their social platforms. Now, I don't want to call anybody out. I'm not going to, make fun of anybody, but if for me, every platform has a different voice, right? And being able to ultimately use that voice to create compelling content, hit the fans where they want to, right? I don't want to see the same thing on Twitter that I see on Instagram. I'm looking at news and I'm looking at up-to-date stats or different things that are kind of happening around today, right? So taking 2 minutes, thinking through this, and then using the tool to edit, right? If you're using and posting this across all platforms, I think you're doing something wrong. So it's just something to kind of call out here. Now, stats are cool, right? Obviously, I put this together. I'm super nerdy. I love digging into this, but I wanted to talk a little bit about who I see doing things really well, right? Now, these examples are going to show some iconic companies, some digital innovators. I think these are folks that are currently playing significant roles in the space, but also just really evolving quickly. So on my side, I want to basically dig in and show you where I see this moving the needle today and where I can kind of give some feedback going forward, right? So I don't know, Modiface was not somebody I was super familiar with. Randomly, since my 6 years here at Social Bakers, I've kind of become our beauty expert. I've built partnerships with Estee Lauder. I've built LVMH. I've got L'Oreal. We've got a lot of different folks that we work with here across the beauty sector. It's one of the biggest that we have, right? What I thought was really interesting with this is, if you think about it, right, this is more of a new innovative product to use, right? This is a completely new use case. So as social buying continues to skyrocket, which I've been talking through the entire time, I thought it was really interesting that last year, only 10% of health and beauty sales were actually online, right? Now, when you look at somebody like Modiface, who's built this AR app that's essentially allowing me to try on my makeup in different colors, they have the ability to also do it for hair as well, which at this point, you might have saw my picture at the beginning, but through the quarantine, I've decided to actually trim this thing all the way off, so I'm not looking super crazy on these webinars. But L'Oreal saw this as an opportunity to jump ahead of the game, right? By using Modiface and allowing partner or you as a consumer to basically test these products in real life. I can't maybe go to the store today. And if I do, I've probably got a mask on, so I'm not even taking it off to test this and try these anyway, right? So I think from our perspective, beauty brands continue to try as hard as possible to emulate that product experience online, But especially now when we're in a spending, I think some spending freeze even at times. Retail is seeing a little bit of a down. This is a way that now L'Oreal is working to basically get this out, through and to get you using this on a regular basis, right? So love this one. That was a really fun example. Now, Starbucks, right? I'm not going to just do small, dinky companies that I hadn't heard of before, new companies, I should say, that I haven't heard of before. But I think Starbucks is, to me, an institution, right? And always does its best to stay modern, stay lovable. To me, this example really stood out. Kind of like Instagram has been hitting me in my little soft spots here, but focusing on experience, right? And that was one of the 4 bullets that I had talked through before. I see them really personalizing the experience. They're doing things with suggesting orders based on the weather, right? I saw some example that they were also doing, if I order via mobile, which has become a huge opportunity, like a huge use for them, right? Everybody mobile ordering. They have the ability to now see I'm 10 miles away. They actually will prioritize my drink to be made later based on how far I am away, right? So they'll put other drinks in first and basically do that. So I think for me, seeing and really using this Deep Brew example was really interesting because now Starbucks has to continue to evolve as well, right? People are maybe going into their stores a little bit less. So how do they continue to engage with those fans at a different time, right? So kind of a cool example. Now, the NFL draft is tomorrow night, right? They're a client of ours. Huge fan, obviously, of sports myself. But what's really going to be interesting is figuring out how are they going to pull this off completely remote, right? They're not going to have an event. It's the first time they've done it fully remote ever, right? So normally you'd have your top 20, 30 picks that basically get together. This year it was supposed to be in Vegas. They were going to have everybody walking through the Bellagio fountain, which I thought sounded insane, but it would have been really cool. That obviously got canceled. And the focus was in Vegas because of the Raiders kicking off there as well. So now they're expecting to break a lot of records as far as viewership goes because we don't have any sports to watch, right? So normally where we would see the players walking across the stage, shaking Roger Goodell's hand and excited and celebrating being chosen in the draft, we're going to be doing that online, right? And I'm really interested to see, there's something that if you have time, Google the Draftathon is something that they're going to be doing where they're actually going to be using the NFL draft to also raise money over the 23rd to the 25th, right? So some really cool stuff that they're doing from a brand perspective. Each team has picked a charity that they're going to kick back to and really now work on helping the world overall as well with that, which I thought was really interesting. So this one's a little bit more near and dear to my heart. Sorry, I'm going to just mute that. Sorry, I'm not sure if that was coming through on both sides, but this one is actually something, and we talked about before, right? Some larger brands that we're working with, and then thinking about some maybe small, medium businesses. Now, this is a startup, right? And I know that, from my perspective, there's a lot of really cool products that are out there, people that are doing stuff. To me, this is a pasta brand that I think is brand new here, right? Just started a few months ago before this all happened. They're doing some really cool, like almost, if you guys have seen it, Nike does a sneakers app where they drop these exclusive sneakers all kind of like, throughout the months. They're doing the same thing with pasta, right? Where you're going to have that at-home pasta experience. They're shooting really beautiful content. They're only using Instagram. They're not overdoing it. They're going to be launching a YouTube channel, which will allow you to actually watch those videos on how they're cooking the pasta and essentially become your own Missy Robbins, who's this famous chef now, James Beard nominee, like that is literally giving you the ability to cook this at home. So I think it's something you should check out. It's a really cool brand that I think is really popping up and something I'm a huge fan of. They have 2 brick and mortar restaurants here in Brooklyn as well, where I actually live. So if you do happen to get to New York, it's something I would definitely check out. Now, quick question, and I'll just start it off here. How many of us watched The Last Dance this last weekend? It was this documentary that was shot back in the 90s, late 90s, and it was about Michael Jordan and his dominance basically throughout the league, right? It's a 10-part docuseries. And why I found this to be more digital transforming was this was not even slated to launch until June, right? They saw an opportunity. They announced this on Christmas Eve here in the US. And essentially that content has been getting sprinkled out across social. I think honestly, I was a huge Pistons fan growing up in Detroit. I used to watch the Bad Boys all the time. Jordan was terrorizing us, right? But I thought I knew a lot of things that were kind of happening during that time. 6.1 million viewers on average for both of the two episodes is insane to me. So I think if it's something you haven't watched yet, Google it. It's on Netflix for those international folks now. It's going to be coming out in the next month, every Sunday, 2 parts. And they're going to be doing that. The thing that I thought was really kind of interesting is Nike also got involved with this. Obviously, if you're familiar with the Jordan brand, I'm a sneakerhead. It's insane. I have way too many shoes. Being able to also take advantage on their sneakers app, which is one of the biggest sneaker apps out there. Nike dropped a limited edition sneaker for this documentary at the moment that it actually kicked off. So I felt like there was this full cycle of being able to really kind of move the needle here for not only The Last Dance, but Nike and Jordan brand overall. So something that was kind of cool. And I want to talk through, before we get down into the Q&A, how do we navigate this maze together? Because I think ultimately being able to understand what is our priority as a company, right? Instagram, by far the number one. Let's get on it. Let's learn how to be good, understand your voice, right? And really start digging into how you're going to engage your fans and what that conversation is going to be, right? I think for us, maybe a month ago, people didn't even know what Zoom was. Now they're using Slack exclusively or other channels to basically evolve. If you don't know and if you're not going to be willing to learn them, right, you're going to be gone. And that's the way that we really need to continue to stay creative, engage our fans, and touch them where they want to be, right? So being able to engage where they are. So I think for me, right, being able to identify partners, and this is something we've talked about throughout this, identify partners that can help you, that have the expertise. We're here to help. We want to connect with you if there's things that we can help you with, or point you in the direction of other folks if we're not the right fit. So I think that's the part that, for me, making sure we're understanding these things, live content, ride the carousel, as I've kind of had put here in my notes, and make sure you're not repurposing that same content. So these are some of the keys that we took through this. And I want to now open it up onto the Q&A, and maybe Lindsay can pop back in and help me with this. But if we could start dropping in any questions into the Q&A, I would love to open this up to the audience now, and spend as much time as you want to dig through those and go from there.
Let's see. I know there were quite a few coming in while we were chatting.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to cover them, but
oh, you did great. Yeah. Let's see. There's one here. If your audience is unique, does repurposing content still work, given that different people are on other networks?
Yeah. So I think about, right, if for me, when I'm looking at this as a brand perspective, I do think that there's some ability to basically cover the same content, but not just copy and paste it, right? I don't want to use the same creative. Maybe I can kind of spice up the text using third-party tools like us or other folks that are out there. We actually offer the ability to use the creative, but actually change the messaging across each of the platforms. So there's ways to do this at scale. So you're not feeling, also when we work with social teams, I feel like there's such small teams, but the demand is always super high. So being able to also help you to understand, right, how to maximize that at scale for yourself is something that we're really good at. So we can help you with those things. And I think that's one way that I would really kind of look at that, right?
Nice. Let's see, we got another one coming in about TikTok. So where do you see TikTok fitting into all of this? Are there any plans for Social Bakers to include TikTok in its analytics reporting?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So TikTok and I was not as up on TikTok as most. I think I've spent more time on it now during the quarantine because I have the time. But we've seen this be one of the fastest moving platforms, right? It's evolving very quickly. Complex Media, who's a partner of ours, is I think one of the better users on there. They've got they were the fastest to get to 1 million on TikTok. And that was a couple months ago. So for me, we want to have it included. There's currently no API that allows us to take that data and upload it into our platform. But we know that it's on the horizon. We've been having a lot of those conversations with TikTok specifically. So hopefully we'll be able to share that in the future with you. But I do think it's a really big opportunity for businesses. But again, making sure that you're able to kind of cover yourself across that platform, not just put yourself on every platform if you can't actually drive the messaging and create the content for it as well.
Great. And let's see, any notes regarding IGTV?
Yeah, I think Instagram TV has been really interesting to me. There's been a lot of brands that are really kind of teasing short form, but ultimately uploading that long form against the IGTV side of it. The tough part is that you have to basically analyze everything natively, right? So understanding how things are performing and what that's working, because Instagram TV lives in its own in data pool, it's not in the API, and the API doesn't allow us to take their data into our platform to analyze that. So there's a little bit more manual lift to understand the performance on that. But I do think it's it's an easy way to tease that long form content with short forms in my stories or anywhere else to then drive people back to the IGTV side to kind of watch there.
Yeah, awesome. Someone had a more of like a Social Bakers specific question. How would you say, or how much would you say Social Bakers is digitally transformed?
I feel like I'm inundated with digital, whether it's meetings, whether it's Slacks, whether it's collaboration. I think what we've really done a great job at Social Bakers with, and I started when we weren't great on this side of it, right? When we only had a few offices and we didn't have 500 workers, where we've really evolved quickly is being able to have conversations at scale, help our clients at scale also across those regions. And I think being able to understand that TikTok is something that's important and have those meetings and be the preferred partners of these platforms, that's where we're really providing value for these brands that we do work with. We've got over 3,000 now worldwide. So being able to ultimately have that, I feel like I think we can always be better. And I think that's what we're really good at, listening to the folks that sit in the regions and finding out also, if it's our teams in Dubai that are putting their hands up and shouting about they need help on something, or Singapore, we all really kind of band together and really help each of the clients kind of understand where they should be as well.
Yeah, great. And so regarding the carousel, how does it perform in paid ads? Do you have any data on that?
So we do. So I think from our side, the paid, it's been really performed well for a lot of the clients. I think for me, the carousel is one of the most underused, because to me, like, nobody's really dug into it. But when you see the stats that we have on it, I think it's one of the most top performing, as you could see with the stats, but it's one of the most, I think, underutilized formats. Hopefully, maybe not now after we've shared this, but I do think it's one of those things that it provides an opportunity for you. The paid side of it is something that's really intriguing. But understanding what's already resonating with your audience allows you to ultimately also pump and pay for the right pieces of content, not just spam your audience, essentially. And that's something we can help you with as well.
Great. I think we have time for a couple more here. When would it be appropriate to use the same content across platforms? Should content always vary across the different platforms?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's more, right, when I start looking at Facebook, I've got a lot more links. I've got a lot more, photos that are performing a lot better, as you saw, and lives, right? Now, those are one way that I'm kind of reaching my audience. When we start looking at things like Twitter, it's more updates, news, short snippets, and things that I can kind of digest quickly as I'm flipping through my feed. And Instagram becomes the part of where I don't want information. I want creativity. I want something that's going to pull me in. The things that I was mentioning about the shoppability of Instagram was also something that I found really interesting, where I'm getting stuff that I'm really interested in, right? And now it's because they're also listening, the microphone's picking up things, and it's ultimately serving me ads and serving me things that I've been either talking about or things that I'm intrigued by, which is now why I'm spending money while I'm sitting here in the quarantine, because they're using that to again target me, which I prefer. Some people get frustrated by it, but I like having stuff that actually makes sense. I don't want to be getting served lipstick or things that I don't care about maybe, right, as much. I want those ads to be relevant. And I think that's been really important.
Yeah. Kind of similar on that. Someone's saying, can you give an example of purpose-driven content?
Yeah. So I think right now, one of the ones that I've really noticed is Anheuser-Busch has been doing a ton of content, and they're a partner of ours, so I've been spending a lot of time on the phone with them. Anheuser-Busch has been doing it with driving around their hand sanitizer that they've built. Basically, they've changed over some of their factories that were producing alcohol and using that alcohol to now drive out this hand sanitizer and help folks kind of around the world. The other thing that they've been really pushing from like a purpose is they have a lot of sports sponsorships as well that they work on. And now they're taking a lot of those facilities where there are no games currently being played and actually using those for triage or testing centers and different things that they're actually helping to fund. So some really cool purpose-driven marketing that they're doing across a lot of the platforms. And that's just kind of top of mind because we were talking through that with them in the last couple of weeks.
Awesome. And this is another kind of more Social Baker specific question. How can marketing managers best work with Social Bakers to create AI-driven campaigns and communicate back to the CEO that the spend really mattered?
Wow. Okay. So Social Bakers really now is helping brands across the board, right? And I think large, small, medium, I focus personally on a lot of our enterprise brands. But when you start thinking about it, understanding how you're performing right on social is part one. Being able to publish that content, being able to understand what you're paying for, who should you be targeting, right? Should we be pushing out more content or less, right? How am I comparing against my competition? We're helping you, and we've become the all-in-one solution to really allow marketers now to be empowered to make those decisions a lot quicker at scale and automate a lot of the process. And that's how we're really focused on driving that value for you all the way up to the CEO today.
Yeah, there's some specific questions coming in here based on different industries, verticals. Someone asked if we have any plans of opening an office in Africa anytime soon. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so I know we have our team in Dubai does a really, really great job about covering that. We actually have been working on some deals with the team over there. We've just added a lot of new folks to our team as well. So I know that we're continually growing. Even during these times, right? Social's become more important for companies than ever. I think now the more and the longer that we potentially quarantine, right? Being able to make sure we're reaching our partners and our fans at the right time, but like in the correct voice on the right platforms. I think that's been really important as we've had a lot of those client meetings over the last few weeks on Zoom here and trying to dig in and make sure that they understand how to continue to do that. That's our goal as a company is how do we help you and empower you to make those decisions just a lot faster at scale.
Nice. Yeah, so I think we can kind of wrap up as we're heading into the top of the hour here. But I think anyone else, if we didn't get to your questions, we're going to have a copy of all of these coming through, and I'll share them with Bob after, and we can follow up directly, or you have his contact info here on the screen now.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody that joined. I also wanted to know if there's any folks, and obviously if you're interested in the beauty industry, I mentioned them a few times. We actually are going to have a State of the Beauty webinar next Thursday. That's 4:30, April 30th at 12 p.m. noon Eastern. So we'll drop the registration link in the chat box right now.
Yes.
We'll also send that around as a follow-up for anybody with the deck from this webinar. These are my ways to kind of connect with me. If you want to send me any messages, my email is very simple as well. If you want to email me directly, it's just bob.gearing@socialbakers.com. Super, super easy. So it's again, bob.gearing@socialbakers.com. If you want to email me directly, I can point you in the right direction. If it's not myself that could help you, we've got a ton of folks on our team that are ready to have conversations with you all, whatever region you're in.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And we will be in touch with the recording in the deck. And thanks, Bob, for doing this. This was a great talk.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Have a good day.
Chat soon.
Thanks. Bye.